Hey everybody, I'm Scott Harkey and welcome to season 4 of Endava's Payment Talks, where we dive headfirst into understanding how companies are shaping the direction of payments. And in this episode, we're going to explore how America's healthcare providers are innovating their payment solutions. Excited today to be joined by John Welch, Chief Product Officer, and Ryne Natzke, Chief Revenue Officer at Trust Commerce. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey Scott, thanks.
Hey Scott.
All right. Well, I actually have a question as part of the intro, in that I know that you guys are part of Trust Commerce, which is also part of Sphere. Tell me a little bit about how those two things relate together. Tell me about your roles in the company, and we can start there.
Sure, absolutely. So Trust Commerce is an omnichannel healthcare-focused payment gateway, and Trust Commerce and Sphere Commerce are essentially the same brand. But Trust Commerce is the gateway and ISO acquiring division of Sphere Commerce. So that's our that's really kind of the nutshell of the product. Ryne, anything you want to put some color on that?
No, so over the years, Sphere has made a couple other acquisitions that kind of become those sub-brands underneath it. So we have another kind of sister company next to Trust Commerce called HealthIPass that does that kind of end-to-end patient financial experience. They've got their own product team, they've got their own sales team, they've got their own CEO. So, but we all roll up under that Sphere umbrella.
Got it. Great. Well, if you guys could tell me a little bit about your roles, Ryne, why don't you go first? What is it you do, and how does that help shape the future of the company?
Yeah, so I'm our Chief Revenue Officer, so I head up our sales team and our partnership team and kind of really everything go to market. So I work really closely with our customers and partners to understand what are their needs, where are they going, and how can we help with our technology complement what they're trying to do within their organization, with a huge healthcare focus. So about 70–80% of our business is healthcare. So thinking about patient billing is really the big part of it. I come from the healthcare side of things. I spent a little over 6 years at Epic. I worked at a venture fund where we focused on digital health IT companies, early stage stuff. So I've been in the health IT space for a really long time. So I kind of bring that lens to these payment, fintech, healthcare workflows.
Cool. And John, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Product Officer with the organization. Been with the company for a little over 18 months now. I am responsible for the company's product strategy, the roadmap, where we're going. I work very closely with Ryne and our account management and sales team, and just look at the market and see what our clients are asking for and what we need to provide to make sure they can offer the best services to their customers and facilitate those transactions. Prior to being at Trust Commerce, I was at Wells Fargo. Prior to that, JP Chase, and I've been in the payments industry pretty much my entire career. So long-time payments veteran over here.
Awesome. Well, happy to have you both. Like I said, we're going to dive a little bit today into the healthcare space, kind of more broadly, and payments in that context. But why don't we start by how would you characterize the current state of healthcare payments in the U.S. specifically? I guess, where are we at? What's kind of the baseline as we start to think about the space?
Yeah, so I guess, a few words come to mind there. So complicated is one. I don't know if I'd go as hard as broken, but when you compare healthcare payments compared to other industries, you don't pay for something before you get it. And oftentimes with healthcare, you don't plan for it either. So if I want to buy a Peloton or a TV or an Xbox or a car or whatever it is, I can budget for it and I can set aside the money and I can plan for it and I can get a loan if I need to or whatever it is. With healthcare, a lot of it is unplanned. So you get sick, you get in a car accident, and now all of a sudden you have a $5,000 bill that you didn't plan for. And you're asked to pay for it weeks or months after the service is given. So being able to invoice for that amount, and make it so that the patient in that case can actually afford it or be able to pay as much as they can is very different than in other industries. And we're way farther ahead than we were even 2, 3, 4 years ago. But there's still a lot of ways to go before we have healthcare payments start feeling like you're buying something off of Amazon or some retail store or something like that.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. I'm familiar with a little bit of the complexity of healthcare payments and the facilitation of them, but we didn't really think about it from the customer experience perspective or the starting point of the journey, if you will, right? And that, like you said, in a lot of cases, the way we interact with purchases or things that we pay for is in we want something, so we go buy it, right? Or we have a bill or a service that we know about ahead of time because we signed up for it, and we have to kind of pay for it. Healthcare is very different in that regard, as you articulated, right? And how do you build financial services for something that's unplanned? And how do you then and how does that impact the products and services that get created to support that?
Yeah, and I mean, an example for me is I went to a dermatologist a few months ago, and they were like, "Hey, you've got this little mole here. Do you want us to do something about this?" And I knew that meant, just being in this space, that was going to be an additional billable thing. They'd ask me, they'd charge me for it, but it was never brought up that it would cost you this. And thinking back on it, it's, even if I would have asked how much is this, there's no way that she would have known, because my insurance is different than yours and John's, and each of us could be in that exact same spot, getting the exact same thing done, being billed very, very different amounts. So it's hard for everybody. It's hard for the healthcare provider themselves to be able to say how much something's going to cost, and it's hard for the patient to be able to make decisions based off of that as well. So some of the things that are happening is more transparency and better data flow of things like checking to see, where is John with his deductible on his plan compared to where Ryne is with his deductible, and what's my copay for this specific procedure, and kind of delivering as much as you can ahead of the time, so you can plan for it or budget for it, or say, maybe let's try to get a down payment for this, and then we'll collect the rest of it once the claim's adjudicated. Other things that are going on are things like smart payment plans. So maybe John, he can take that $2,000 bill right off the top and not need to finance it. He can write that check or pay online and take care of that. But if I get that $2,000 bill, maybe I need it to be spread out over 4 months. And knowing ahead of time who you should offer a payment plan to versus who you should collect the full amount up front for, helps goes a long way from a collection standpoint and a patient experience standpoint to kind of check both boxes.
So how is technology helping solve these problems, right? I think that's a great articulation of some of the experiences that can be created, but how does technology play a role in that, and what are some of the things that it's directly helping to enable?
So some of the technology pieces are really that data connectivity of understanding what that health plan is. So being able to exchange and get real-time information of what somebody's benefit plan is and how and where they are among those things. There's some legislation lately as well with the No Surprises Act and having to publish some of your prices. So really being able to put some of that stuff out there and making that more visible for consumers, and really, no consumer is going to go on the hospital website and look at hundreds of thousands of lines of text. That's going to be consumed by technology and automated, and using AI and using other logic tools to be able to deliver the right information to the right person at the right time so they can make the right decision. And then those propensity to pay models, which I think historically you can look at something as basic as a credit score, but I think some of the models going forward are way more sophisticated from that to really know how much somebody can afford and why and when.
Yeah. John, you add in something?
Yeah, so I'd add to that as well. Technology integrated into all those experiences gives patients and providers the ability to make those payments seamlessly. So no matter which point they're engaging, the patient is engaging with the provider, there's an opportunity to facilitate that payment at a time that's convenient for them via a payment method that's convenient for them. So if we look at some of the new digital wallets, the Apple Pays, the Google Pays, the PayPals, and enabling patients to leverage those is just it's facilitating an easier, less painful, friction payment experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective of if we can do all that kind of behind the scenes and then to the end customer, right, make it really simple. One of the experiences that comes to mind, I don't know if this is something that you guys do work in, but is the like prescription checkout process, right? When I go to a pharmacist and there's a price for a certain prescription that maybe I'm picking up, and they run it through every different discount scheme that they have access to, right?
Yeah.
There's the ones based on my insurance, there's other just general ones, there's all these different ones, and I don't have to think about it. The only reason I even know is because they're just talking to me about it, and they're saying, hey, I ran this through these 5 different discount or programs, and this is the best price I could find for it. My first reaction is that's absurd that like that same prescription has 5 different prices depending on which way you happen to kind of code it or run it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of it is it's nice that as an end consumer, I don't have to think about it at all, right? They do that on my behalf. So all I do is just pay for it and hopefully I'm getting the best price.
And you can
What are
even
some
go,
of the
oh, sorry,
yeah, go
Scott. I
ahead.
was just going to say it even goes even ahead of that workflow of, I think when that prescription's being prescribed to you, maybe there are 2 or 3 therapeutically equivalent ones, but
Right.
one of them could be 5 to 10 times more than the other one. And if the provider has the tools in front of them as well when making that decision, then maybe they can help even upstream from the workflow you just described.
Yeah, I like the point you made earlier around transparency. I guess when I think about some of these things, and I kind of pull back to the technology that's enable them, how do integrations play into this? What is it? Is it ultimately about we just need to connect everybody to everybody, and then the use cases or the customer experiences when they create become much easier? Or is it more difficult than that? Are there nuances about which different types of entities in the value chain can connect to which and the order of those flows? Or help me understand a little bit more about that.
So when I think of integrations, I think of kind of putting them in 2 different buckets. There's the integration of the workflow within your own provider experience. So you get an appointment reminder for a visit that you have with the doctor next Tuesday to confirm it. We've probably all got those text messages and emails. But maybe integrating payment into that to say, hey, not only do you have a visit next Wednesday, but your copay is $30. Let's take care of that right now before you even show up. Or you have a past due balance from your last visit for $80. Let's take care of that before you even show up. So it's integrating the payment collection and communication with other stuff that's happening along the patient journey. So whether that's an appointment reminder or forms or checkout, whatever it is, being able to do that. And then that's within systems that the provider has. And then there's the integration of the provider to outside systems. So that's the going to the insurance company to get that information, or integrating to a patient financing company that can help with payment plans, but still make the provider whole for those sorts of things. So it's integration matrix of all sorts of different ways of making that happen that make that experience better.
Yeah, John, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I'd add to that of course, utopia would be that everyone uses the same common standard and the data can flow between entities seamlessly. The reality is that that's not the case, and that's actually a role that we are proud to play in this industry because we're an ISO, so we can acquire payments, but also we're gateway, we're processor agnostic. Sorry, so it doesn't matter whether a merchant is using any of the major processors, we can support that and we can at least simplify that experience for them. So we try and help there where we can.
Are entities in the value chain, and this is just my lack of knowledge of the space, are most of the entities in the value chain willing to integrate and share data in a way to create that customer experience? Or is it fairly territorial of, no, the insurer wants to keep this set of information, so they keep the customer. I'm used to financial services, right, where there's this whole conversation around banks and open banking and what do the banks kind of hold close so that they can control the customer experience versus what do they let out into other experiences. What does that look like in the healthcare space?
I mean, there are the line between insurance and provider is getting grayer by the day. I mean, you have these really big providers, somebody like a Kaiser, for example, right? They have their own health plans, they have their own providers, they can do both sides. Somebody like an Optum, they have, I think it's close to 100,000 providers that they employ, and they're also the biggest insurance company in the world. So they can do some cool stuff by having both sides of it. But I think at the end of the day, nobody wins if people don't pay for their services and if they're confused about it and they have a bad experience. So I think the incentives are there to make sure everybody exchanges the right information. And doing that doesn't mean you open up everything and share your entire database of everything you have, but making sure that you have that right information so that it can be used correctly to make that payment experience better and more transparent, I think is what everybody wants.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, what do you guys see as some of the just big picture challenges and opportunity in the space when we think about providers? What are the biggest things they're struggling with, and what are some of the biggest opportunities you see for them to move things forward?
Yeah, John, you want to start with this with some of the stuff we're working on?
So sure. I would say the omnichannel experience, that enabling and facilitating payments at every patient touch point, it sounds like a very easy thing to factor in. But if you think about all the various different interactions that a patient might have before the visit, during the visit, after the visit, unexpected bills and invoices that might come in later on, trying to offer solutions and services that take away some of those points of friction and then facilitate that seamless experience, I think is some of the the opportunities, one of the major opportunities out there. Ryne?
Yeah, and I think so what I like to say is healthcare doesn't have a demographic. We're all patients. We're all going to pay a doctor at some point. It doesn't matter if you're old or young or rich or poor, whatever it is, you're gonna end up paying. And when you have that widespread consumer base, patient base, they're gonna have different payment methods. So some of the stuff that we've been working on and will continue to work on is doing more than just ACH and credit card. So being able to do things like digital wallets, whether it's Apple Pay, Google Pay, or PayPal or Venmo or whatever it is, so that as a provider, you can give that option to your patients and kind of catch up to where the other industries are. Healthcare generally is going to lag between other industries. Part of it's because a lot of it's really big and slow moving. Part of it's because patient collections is really a small part of the overall revenue for the health system anyway. So you're going to focus more on the insurance payments. And the other part is just being a risk adverse industry. Healthcare is not going to jump in and say, we're going to do cutting edge things because you're taking care of people's lives, right? So the kind of that culture is part of that.
What about things like real-time payments and maybe account-to-account type payments? Have you found those becoming in demand from a provider perspective, or are we still too far away from that?
Yeah. So I'll say it's come up from time to time, but not frequently. As Ryne said, healthcare is a risk-averse industry, and real-time payments and FedNow are pretty new. They're only a few years old at this point, and they're still gaining a lot of that traction, a lot of that adoption. So for right now, I think the core focus is on offering some of the more well-known, well-rounded payment types, the PayPals, the Apple Pays, the Google Pays, and really building adoption up for those rather than account to account and some of the instant bank transfer payment methods.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I come from the other side of this, right, where I spend a lot of time working with the companies that are developing those products, and they're looking for the use cases, they're looking for the adoption. So it's not surprising to hear that from your standpoint, not there yet. Interesting, right? Keep our eye out on it, but not forefront in the things that people are asking for today.
It definitely comes up from time to time. Sorry.
And if you're looking at your patient collections, you're probably only collecting 60 to 70% on a good day of how much you're actually billing. So if you can move that from 70 to 80, 75 to 85, that's going to move the needle a ton more than maybe getting your deposit a day earlier or something along those lines. So there's some more improvement in other areas. And I think as that approaches 100 and you're looking for increased efficiencies, that's where some of that stuff you just described makes perfect sense to kind of come in there.
Yeah, well, maybe as a takeaway for others that are working on those types of products, it sounds like positioning them in the context of how they can drive increased payment collection, is an angle that could be more valuable than thinking of it from just a pure speed standpoint, right? If I can position a real-time payment product as, hey, I can help you increase your collections by 10%, well, that's suddenly way more compelling than just here's another payment method and it happens to move money faster.
It would, and I'd also add on to that as well, that as we think about the payment is one part of it. The payment is one part of the experience, but there's the whole reconciliation piece that goes in the background that a lot of these providers need to cater for as well. They'll have rooms of people who are analyzing deposits into accounts versus what's been paid and what they're expecting in invoices and AR files and everything else. And so tying those two elements together, I would say, would be really beneficial as well. So it just simplifies the entire experience from beginning to end, and there's no confusion as to who's been paid what, where, when, and why.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, the last thing we'll hit on is just around collaborations and partnerships. What role do you see those in your own business, but in the space more generally? I think, as we've already discussed, there's lots of entities involved in the value chain around healthcare. How do you think about partnerships and the role that it plays in you guys' business?
Yeah, so that going back to my kind of the two groups of the integration interfacing buckets, that first one of working within the ecosystem of a healthcare provider. I mean, our customers have dozens, if not hundreds, of different systems that they use within their own organization across clinical delivery, operational delivery, financial, patient-facing, all those different things. So if we want to try to collect off of an appointment reminder and try to collect on a form and try to collect on an intake and go down the line for all those different things, those might be 4 or 5 different systems that healthcare provider is using. So having those partnerships and the relationships to be able to say, hey, let's work together to incorporate payments into your piece. You might be the best forms vendor in the world, but we think we're pretty good at payments, and let's work together to make it so we can do both of these things at the same time. So it really helps the patient experience. So it feels at least like you're not using 10 different systems to interact with your doctor. If it all works really well together and those companies are working well to kind of exchange data and make those workflows more seamless.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the end goal, right? It's ultimately about the customer experience that gets created, and whether it's tech or it's partnerships or it's all these things, if it ultimately they serve that purpose of creating the customer experience that is easy, clean, easy to understand, then we're all doing it right, and I think we get where we need to get. So awesome. Well, Ryne and John, thank you both. It's awesome to learn more about Trust Commerce and what you guys are doing, and also just to hear your thoughts on the space and how it's evolving. Appreciate your time and appreciate you being here today.
Thanks, Scott.